Hello everybody, welcome to STEAM Train. My name is Mr. J. I'm the children's librarian working at the East Cobb Library, and this program is a science, technology, engineering, and math program that's focused around kids ages 5 to 7. Each one we're going to talk about a different science related topic, and then we're going to do a hands-on experiment at the end together. Now before we get started, I do want to tell you a little bit about the different materials you're going to need for the hands-on experiment so that you can get ready now if you'd like, or just so that you can get them before you watch the rest of this video. So for today's hands-on experiment, we're going to be making our own rain cloud in a jar. Now in order to do that, you're going to need a glass jar. A mason jar works best, but other glass jars work just fine. A pickle jar, for example, even a glass cup could probably work. I haven't tried it with a glass cup, but it'd probably work okay. You're going to need some spray shaving cream that's in a can. You don't want any of the lather stuff, you just want the stuff in the can. And then you're going to want some blue food coloring. You can get it at your local grocery store. It's not too expensive. You usually have to buy it with the whole thing, but that's okay. It's not too bad. And then the last thing, it's optional. If you have a dropper, like just one of those little droppers, that'll be very helpful, but you don't have to have it. It's okay if you don't. So let's go ahead and start our discussion. So first, what are clouds? Well, clouds are those big white puffy things that you see up in the sky. Sometimes they can be a little bit gray, sometimes they can even be a little bit black, and sometimes they can have rain. But what is a cloud made out of? Is it made out of cotton candy or even just cotton? Well, it might look like it is sometimes, but it's actually made out of the weirdest thing ever. It's made out of water vapor. So what is water vapor? Well, water vapor is kind of when the sun heats up water a whole lot and it evaporates up into the air, and eventually it can form these clouds. But there's water all over the place, and there aren't necessarily clouds all over the place, although today there's a lot of clouds out today. So maybe there's something else that you have to have in order to make a cloud than just water vapor. And if you think that, you'd be right. So inside clouds, there are also these little particles of dust. And the dust is kind of how the whole process gets started. Because if there aren't the dust particles, you won't necessarily get clouds. You're just going to get a really humid atmosphere, but it won't all stick together. So the reason the dust is really important is because when you have your dust particles up in the air and the water evaporates, your water, so this is H2O here, will stick to it. And then another one will stick to it. And then another one will stick to it. And they'll all bunch together, and then the water molecules will start sticking to each other, and that's how they come together to make a cloud. Now, we know what a cloud is made of now. It's water vapor and dust, and we know that it comes from water vapor that evaporates, but how does that happen? Well, I have it drawn in my picture a little bit. Clouds most often form when there's dust in the air over the largest bodies of water on our planet, which is the oceans. And so the sun will shoot down its hot rays into the ocean. The ocean gets heated up. Let me get my blue for this. And it'll evaporate. And there's a lot of water in the ocean. In fact, the most water. And it's easy to evaporate as well. And so most clouds form over the ocean. So, what happens to clouds after that? Well, clouds, they get blown around by air currents that are high above the surface of the earth. You don't always feel them, but sometimes when a storm comes, you might. And so the clouds get blown far, far away from the ocean, and they come across the land. And the whole time that they do, more and more water is building up and accumulating and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And once there's enough, all of that water sticking together gets to be a little bit too heavy. And then what happens? Well, that's how you get rain. So once a cloud has accumulated too much water, the water keeps bumping into each other and sticking together and sticking together. And when it gets big enough, it can't float up in the air anymore. And then it falls. And when you get that happening a whole lot, you get rain. And that's where we get rain from. It comes all the way from the ocean, rises high into the air, sticks to that dust. The winds blow the cloud out to over our land, and then it gets too heavy and it falls back down. And that is called the water cycle. Because then from there, the rain lands on the ground, it seeps into the earth, and eventually over time it gets back into the ocean. So it's like a big circle. Now, let's talk about different types of clouds. I'm sure you've seen different types of clouds and thought, yeah, that one looks like a dog, or that one looks like a blanket, or that one looks like snow. And there actually are different types of clouds. Now, there's a lot of different types of clouds, but there's three major types of clouds. And the first one, the one that I drew right here, this one is called a cumulus cloud. Cumulus clouds are the ones you see the most, and they're also the ones that you think of the most when you think of rain and storms. Cumulus clouds look like giant balls of cotton up in the air. And with cumulus clouds, the bigger they are, the more likely they are to have rain. Another type of cloud is called a stratus cloud. And stratus clouds are much higher up in the air than cumulus clouds. See, cumulus clouds are heavy with water, so they tend to be closer to the ground. Stratus clouds are higher up in the air, and they almost look like a large, flat, soft blanket that you could lay on. And then the last major type of cloud are cirrus clouds. And they kind of look like feathery, wispy white clouds. They're very, very high up in the air. And they're so high up in the air, in fact, that they don't have water in them like normal clouds. They actually have ice particles. And when you think of snow, that's usually the type of cloud that you're going to see. So that's how clouds work. So in quick recap, the sun heats up the ocean, the water evaporates into the sky and bonds with dust. When enough of it bonds together, you get a cloud. Wind blows the cloud over to the land where you and I live, and then eventually that cloud gets too heavy and it rains and it pours. A lot of that rain will eventually seep into the ground, and it slowly drifts back out over time to the sea, either through lakes or rivers or just going through the ground. And once it goes back to the sea, it stays there for a while, heats up, and does it all over again. Pretty amazing stuff. All right, so now that we've talked about clouds, we're going to make our very own cloud in a jar. So go ahead and get those items ready, and I'll be right back and we'll make one together. Hey everybody, and welcome back. We're going to now do our hands-on experiment. So you want to get your items. We're going to start off with our jar, 2/3 full, clear glass jar. We're going to also use a cup with some water in it. We're going to use blue food dye. And then lastly, this is optional again, but a dropper. Now again, if you don't have a dropper, that's okay. You can just drop the food dye directly onto the top of the cloud. And then speaking of clouds, our last thing is some shaving cream in a can. All right, so let's start doing this together. So first, we're going to take our jar And you want to use kind of like cool or lukewarm water. You don't want it to be hot. If you make it too hot, it will dissolve the shaving cream too fast. All right, so now that we got our water not moving, we're going to use our shaving cream and make a little cloud. Now, I recommend when you do this that the cloud doesn't come out of the top of the jar, but if you want one that's that thick, or if you want it to come out of the top, that's okay. Just make sure that when you're dropping your water on top of it, that it isn't rolling off the sides. So let's go ahead and make our cloud. Now, it doesn't have to be too terribly thick, but you do want it to cover most of the opening in there. So mine did an okay job of that. This is how not to make your cloud. All right, so now we've got our water, which represents the sky. We've got our shaving cream on top, which makes a nice fluffy cloud. Now, I did come out of the top a little bit. I know I said not to, but that's okay. Sometimes it's a little trial and error. So next, you're going to take your water cup and you're going to put the blue food dye inside. And I recommend about 3 to 5 drops, just so you get it extra dark in there. I'm going to do 5. My cup is only about half full. That way it's going to get extra thick. Now again, if you don't have a dropper, you don't have to mix it in the water. You can instead just drop it directly on top. And I'm going to go ahead and mix it. I also recommend using a paper cup for this, just because 5 drops of food dye is a lot of food dye. Look at that beautiful blue color. And you don't want to stain anything with blue food dye. All right, so now what you do is you take your dropper or food dye directly, whichever one you want to do. Here, I'm going to get myself in the camera a little bit better. Is you're going to take it and you're going to drop it right onto the top of your cloud. And it will take quite a few drops, which is why I recommend the dropper and diluting it with water instead of just using pure food dye. But you don't have to. You're more than welcome to use the dye directly. So this is our water, and we're putting the water into the cloud, and it's going to get heavier and heavier, and the cloud just can't hold it anymore. And once it goes all the way through, it's going to start raining down. You can put it in a couple of different places if you want. And look at that. We've already got one. We've got rain in a jar. Look at this. Look at that. It's already raining. Right there, my cloud. Now, don't worry if it takes you longer to have your rain come through. I kind of cheated just a little bit to make it go through quickly. But if you're dropping and dropping and dropping and it's just not going through your cloud, that's okay. It can take a little bit of time for the water to kind of accumulate and get too heavy for our shaving cream cloud to hold. So don't fret, just keep on trying. Eventually it'll come through and you'll have your very own rain cloud in a jar. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so that's it for this hands-on experiment. Please join us next month, and next month I think the topic is, I actually don't remember. Well, anyway, check the description. It'll tell you what it is and what we need, and then I'll hopefully see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.